So without further ado, I'd like you to welcome to this webinar about knowledge management in SharePoint. I'm joined by my colleague, Phil. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Rupert. Hi, everyone.
Thanks, Phil. So my name is Rupert Squires. I'm one of the co-founders of Information EXP, and we've been delivering these webinars around the value that SharePoint can bring when you think about solutions. So there's other webinars we've done around policies and procedures and intranets, which you can find on our YouTube channel. But let's just dive into knowledge management and let's go. So Phil, who's this for?
So typically, this would be useful for anyone who's within an operational role, or you might be a knowledge manager within your organization. But essentially, it's useful for anyone that's frustrated about capturing and sharing knowledge across your organization.
Yeah, I think it's that common piece where people know stuff, but if it was just written down or just saved in a place, it would be super useful for everyone to benefit from. And given that, what are going to be the takeaways from today?
So there's two areas that we're going to be covering. The first one being how you can capture and store knowledge from various different repositories across your organization. And then secondly, how you can manage and surface that knowledge so your employees can start benefiting and accessing that information.
Okay, so that's great. I think that would be a great outcome from today. Now, Phil, you've worked with a number of our clients. What are the reasons why people are struggling with knowledge management when they approach us at the beginning saying, help, we need some help with knowledge management. Can you help us with this? What do they come to you with?
So there's probably four key areas that we see as being the really big issues that our clients have. The first one being capturing that information. So there isn't really a kind of formal or easy way for employees to capture knowledge. They just don't know what kind of method that they should be using, or they don't know where they should actually be storing that information. Secondly, it's the ability to actually find that knowledge. Company intranets can be a bit of a maze. Just having a dedicated area to store knowledge is just making it much easier to be able to find. The third one being confidence. So just having confidence that the knowledge that you find is still up to date and it's still relevant. I've often come across valuable resources of information on a company intranet only to discover that it hasn't been updated for a number of years and it's no longer relevant. And then the last issue is really around scope, which is really just understanding what knowledge is and being able to define what knowledge is within your own organization. But in general, I think the main thing is there isn't really an embedded culture of knowledge sharing, which is the biggest challenge that our clients face.
Yeah, so technology is part of the story by the sounds of it, but also the culture. And so if we can remove maybe some of that friction, then we can help drive the culture forward. The last point, I think you talked about scope. What is knowledge? So I see a lot of different kinds of information in an organization. So some of the things that we've highlighted here. Do you just want to dive into this, Phil?
Sure. So some of this information, we could be talking about project handover documents. So when a document's going to come to an end, just being able to store any of those documents which are useful and reusable for a future project. They could be case studies. They could be white papers that might be useful and relevant to our employees. So yeah, various different types of kind of knowledge.
So we've got all this information. And I guess the question is all of this knowledge? And we have a view on this. Now, there isn't an official body of knowledge management, so you can create your own view on what you think knowledge should be or shouldn't be. This is our view. So on the next slide, what we see here, we kind of separate it to what are the operational documents, which is maybe HR policies and that kind of thing, which is how your company runs its people. But what is the value chain piece? And that's where we see knowledge. So the value chain is how you serve your customers, your clients. And that can be things like in a pre-sale stage, a sales presentation, a case study. It can be at the end of a project where you've delivered something and you've got some handover documents, or maybe if you're a lawyer, you've got the final version of a contract. But it might also be things which support that sales process. So something you've heard about in industry news. What we tend not to include is things like maybe HR policies, because that can sit in a policies and procedures area, or company news, which is something like we have a new operations director. Does that really help the value chain? Does that help your own client? Does it help you do what you do to serve your clients? Probably not. Now, as I said before, there isn't an official body of knowledge. So this is our view on it. And this is how we are going to be taking the webinar forward. So talking about, Phil, do you just want to break down knowledge from a slightly different perspective?
Sure. So we've broken knowledge down into three kind of groups. The first one being tacit knowledge. So tacit knowledge, the best way to describe tacit knowledge would be things that people have learned through their own experience, but it hasn't really been formally captured. So it could be that I've had some kind of problem or some kind of issue. I've researched possible solutions and I've managed to implement some kind of solution for that problem, but it's all just sitting in my head, really. So it's not really available for employees to benefit from. The second type of knowledge would be explicit knowledge. So this is the one which I guess most people are probably more aware of. This is knowledge that has been more formally captured and documented, added into user guides, reports, white papers, case studies, that kind of information. And then the third type of knowledge, I call it ad hoc knowledge. So the best way that we would describe this as being, it's just the way that we do things around the workplace. They're not necessarily documented. It's just a common understanding across the workforce that that's just the way that we do things, but it's just not actually formally documented.
Okay, so I think the focus today really is that tacit knowledge now, that explicit knowledge. I think companies don't see, if everyone does things a certain way, is the value in actually writing it down? That's a separate question. So let's consider, Phil, the knowledge management lifecycle. So on the next slide, we've got a high level process, and this is what we're going to be following today through the demos. So that first piece is identifying where that knowledge is within your environment. We're Microsoft partners, so we're going to be talking about the Microsoft environment, but we're going to be thinking about things like maybe projects, Q&As, and we're going to come on to a bit more of that into a second. Once you've identified it, it's then about the capturing. How do we capture that information? So the second part of this process is the capturing on that. How do we get the information into our knowledge base? Once we've captured it, we then need to validate that it's correct and classify it. So the validation is the piece around the subject matter expert saying, right, yeah, this is good knowledge, this is correct, this is something we want to share. Or it might be, actually, this is not correct, or when it was written, it was maybe correct, but it's not correct anymore because something's changed in the world. And then you've got that knowledge manager who's going to do the classification to make sure that we've got the right metadata attached to knowledge. And that data is going to help drive dissemination. So dissemination is, we've got this information, how do we publish it? And it might be something that could be proactive, are we pushing things through a news article? Or it could be more in the search experience where someone knows, I'm looking to solve this problem. Let's see if someone solved it before. And then the final part of this process is the managing. So once this knowledge is out there, knowledge typically is living. So that means that what was true in the past might not be true in the future, particularly maybe if you work in the legal world, you'll find, or technology world, that things move on, precedents change. So how do we make sure that our knowledge remains current? And this is a really key part in maintaining the trust and confidence in a managed solution. So I think one more slide, Phil, before we go into a demo, and I just want to dive into the identifying and capture piece here. So within an organization, people might seek help through conversations, and particularly now with Microsoft Teams, it is a natural place to do that. Support functions dealing with Q&As, customers saying, can you get this to work? And someone going to research something and then capturing that. A point earlier, we talked about earlier, was project outcomes. You maybe create a training guide, maybe something for Microsoft Teams like we're using today. But what that will then say is, well, actually, this is really good. We want to save this and use this again. And let's actually manage it. So let's say Microsoft Teams gets updated. We know that we can go back and update that version of the truth. And the last piece is this published content. So things like, oh, the marketing team have created a case study, let's publish it. But that's not necessarily always internal, but it can also be external too. So it can be maybe an industry white paper which supports what you do in your business and could be useful maybe to your sales team. So that's talking about it. Let's dive in to our demo environment, Phil.
Okay. So I'm just bringing up our demo environment. This is our SharePoint site. Now, just for the purpose of this demo, I'm only going to be using one account. So this is Megan, who's going to be essentially doing everything as part of our demo. In the real world, you'll obviously be having different people performing different roles. So just the person submitting content won't necessarily be approving that content as well. But like I said, just for this purpose of this demo, we'll just be using one account. So as you see here, we're on the homepage for our intranet site. We've got the news web part that's showing all of our company news. There's some quick links on the right-hand side just to jump to some specific areas within our intranet. And then up in the mega menu, we've got the intranet hub. So if I just click on that, it will just take me to the company specific information. So missions and values, supporting services, those kind of different areas of our site. And then if I just click on the departments menu, what you can see here are sites dedicated to each of the different departments within our organization.
Okay, Phil. And that's actually a really useful point. A lot of people, when they look at intranets, they try and group the department working space, say sales, operations, marketing, to the same place where people publish their information, and it has a confused purpose. So really what we look to do is separate where I get my work done. And realistically, you probably wouldn't have all departments available to you, because if you worked in sales, it's unlikely you're going to have access to the HR working area. And then when you publish stuff, if we look on the Intranet Hub, then we create areas where we're going to publish information. So Phil, if you just want to put your mouse over Intranet Hub on the left, yeah, you can see that we've got marketing collateral, for example, under resources might be an area where marketing will publish some of their content. So that's an important point if you're designing your own intranets, to consider how you separate where things are published and where work gets done. For this scenario, we are worried about where work gets done. So if you want to go over to departments and click on.
Okay, so I can see that case study in Word.
Excellent. So we know that's open. We can close that. We know it's real content. It's something that which could be useful in our knowledge base. And so the big thing is, right, how do we get this into our knowledge base? And we've created an app to make this a little bit easier. So there's a couple of ways we can access this. Number one is we can click against the three ellipses next to the actual file name. And you can see way down at the bottom there, we've got submit as knowledge. But we've also got this popping up at the top toolbar next to the download button, which has got a nice little cool icon. So Phil, I'd like you to click on that and then follow the process through.
Okay, so I'm just going to click on the submit as knowledge. And then this window has just popped up on the right-hand side. And there's 4 drop-down menus that have appeared for me to fill in. So the first one being the document type. So if I just click on that drop-down menu, what you can see is a list of different types of document type. There's a pre-configured list that I can look through. So based on this on this case study, I'm just going to obviously select the case study as the document type. The second drop-down menu is the solution drop-down menu. So if I just click on that, and there's 5 different solutions that are here. And these are the best way to think about these are the different solutions that we as an organization offer to our clients. So based on the case study and what they're kind of talking about, I'm going to put that under the intranet solution, as it's more related to the intranets that we're producing. The third drop down is the phase. So if I just click on the drop down for here, and what you'll see is 6 different phases. And these phases are essentially the life cycle of a project that we're running for a client. And based on the fact that this is a case study, it makes sense to go in a pre-sales phase. So for us, that's what we describe as the expect phase. So I'll just click on that option there. And then the last option here is the sector. So if I click on the drop down, and what you'll see is a number of different sectors that this relates to. Just based on the case study, I'm going to decide that it's going to be the information sector that this kind of relates to. And now I'm just going to click on submit to submit that knowledge.
Excellent, Phil. So you can close that form on the top right there. And what that's done is popped it into our knowledge base, but it's only put it in as a draft. It's not been published to the world yet. So it's pending that approval. But that's the first stage of a process. So that's how we can work with files within SharePoint. But let's go back to this other scenario, which is Teams chat. So we've got Teams in the browser here. Now, it's just like Teams on the desktop, but because we're running multiple environments and webinars, it's the best way to do it to make sure we can demonstrate it to you. So Phil, if you've got a question, where would you go and ask it?
So within our organization, we have a knowledge team. So I'm just going to jump to the view within Teams. From here, you can see all the different teams that I'm currently a member of. And there's a knowledge forum team that's sitting in here. And within the knowledge forum, there's a number of different channels. And what you'll notice is that these channels relate directly to the solutions that we offer. So if I had a particular question, I would just go to the channel, the most relevant channel for my question, and just click on a new conversation and just post my question in there. And then my other colleagues, they'll be able to see the question and provide replies to that question to help me out. Hopefully we'll be able to get an answer from across the organization.
So Phil, I can see that you've obviously, or you or Megan, have written a question about the webinar form auto registration. And actually that's a scenario based that we had with this webinar. You've put a question out there. you've got a couple of responses. I see the first response is not overly useful, just saying what you can't do. But then Diego's come in and told you what you can do. Now, I suspect other people might have this question down the line. So wouldn't it be great if we actually could save Diego's response and the context? So if we look at that, we've got webinar form auto registration. That's the subject of this chat. And then Diego's put a really useful response there. So the way to save it into knowledge is if you click on that reply there and the ellipses on the just top right-hand corner, there you go. Now, under more actions, we've deployed an app here, which is called Submit Knowledge. So just click on that and follow the process through.
Okay. I've clicked on Submit Knowledge. There's a quick pop-up that I just need to confirm. And then if I just give this a moment.
So yeah, what you're seeing here is adaptive cards. This is something that we've developed. And yeah, now you go, Phil. You've been asked a few more questions.
Sure. So what you'll see here, there's an adaptive card with those 4 drop-down menus. So these are the same 4 drop-down menus that we had when we submitted that document earlier on. So I can just click on the document type. Based on this question, it's kind of more relevant to training material. The phase I'd put in, it's probably been more related to our experience phase. And then I'm just going to leave the sector blank because it's not related to a specific sector. But for the solution, I'm just going to put this down to being Microsoft 365 user adoption, as it kind of more closely aligned with that solution that we offer. So I just filled in those drop-down menus, and now I'm just going to click on Submit Classifications.
Excellent, Phil. So again, that's taking that information and it's popping to a knowledge base. And we're going to show you how that renders itself in a second. Now, final piece, and what we've been talking about here is we need to put technology where the people work so we can capture that information. We talked about projects, and we've got an active project here with web solutions. And I think, Phil, under design and build, you've created some documents.
Yeah, that's right. I'll just go to the file area.
And I suspect, Phil, what happens at the end of a project? Or what would you like to happen even better?
So we've got a couple of documents here. So the solution and design PowerPoint and the user guide PowerPoint are really good assets that we produce for this project, and we'd like to just reuse them and make them available for future projects. The meeting minutes is obviously just kind of specific to this project, so it's not really relevant to keep that as knowledge. We still want to archive that information, but just wouldn't be reusable for future projects.
Okay, well, we've got a process around that. So if we click on the marketing tab back into SharePoint on the top left there, here, and then if you click on projects, we actually manage our team's projects through a list in SharePoint. So with some automation around that, the provisioning of projects, but in this case, the closing down of projects. So we've got a few projects in progress, but as you know, the one we're worried about is the Web Solutions Limited. So let's click on those ellipses, and we're going to fire off a process here as part of Power Automate to shut down that project. So there we go. We've got DMS close project. Now, what that's going to do, Phil, once you've clicked on that, is it's going to pop a little window. There's no options or configuration required, so we can simply press run flow when that appears. But at the end of a project, we want to remove it from people's screens and drop-downs because it's cluttering up Microsoft Teams. So what it's going to do is not going to delete it, it's going to archive it. But the second thing it's going to do is take those assets and put them into our knowledge base. But they need to be curated and validated first. So it's not going to publish them to the outside world. So I think that takes us nicely to the first end set of demos. And if you just pop back to the deck, Phil, what we've seen there is getting information through conversations and how we can capture that. We've talked about project outcomes and running a process to make sure that any of those project documents can also be captured. And then the very first demo was around the published content. So how do we capture information created by departments across the organization? Or you could take a maybe external content, maybe as a PDF, dropped it into that department area, and then actually submit it into your knowledge base. So you've got options there. So that's the identify and capture. Moving on, Phil, we're talking about validating and classifying. So that validation is that subject matter expert saying, because they might not have been the person who submitted the knowledge or wrote the knowledge, to say, yeah, this is good. This is something that we should be sharing, and what that review process looks like. But the second piece is, how do we make sure that it's classified correctly? So those drop downs obviously reflect the information architecture we designed for this scenario. Every organization will have its own different information architecture, but we need somebody to be responsible to make sure that's consistently done. Some people might call it a knowledge curator. Other people call it a librarian. So let's see how that materializes, Phil. So going back into Microsoft Teams, we can now go back to Power Automate. You can see it's been generating a few cards in the background. So the first one at the top there is around the case study, and the one below is more about the closed project. So let's do things in order. Let's go back to our case study and do that filtered review. So we just want to see this one item. We don't want to see all the other stuff which we have in our inbox right now.
Okay, so I clicked on the link in Teams. This is now taking me through to a document library within our knowledge site. And from here, I can see that that case study, the software development case study, is now sitting here in that library. The metadata that we put in at the when we submitted it has also been incorporated here, and also the approval status for the document is currently showing as pending.
That's great, Phil. I think at this stage, that is where your librarian or knowledge curator can come in and say, actually, are those classifications correct? You know, we tried to do the work for this person, but they've got this opportunity to validate it. So we're happy with this. Let's get it approved. So the way to do that is to highlight the document. There's a couple of ways, but we're going to click on the three ellipses next to rename. And as you can see, you've got this approve and reject.
Okay, so I'm just going to click on approve and reject. And this is the out of the box approval process. I could reject this document, but we're just going to approve that because it's kind of useful information, and click OK. And then what you'll see here is the approval status for that document has now changed from pending to being approved.
Okay, and I feel actually, if you just scroll across the right, what you'll see at the moment is there's a review date there, which is currently set for today. Now, we have a little process which is running behind the scenes, which is going to update that. And hopefully next time we see that, it should be, I think, 90 days out. So we set a review that everything needs to be reviewed 90 days. So that process will work. And hopefully later on in the demo, that date should be updated. So that's our case study. Let's go back and look at those project documents. So if you go back to Microsoft Teams, and as you can see, we've got please tag documents. So we've got the message saying you've closed the project. We must now go through, update the document tags, delete any unnecessary files that we don't want to go in there. So we can click in there.
I'm clicking on the view documents link. And again, I'm taken through to our knowledge site. So the document library that within that knowledge site, I can see the three documents that were sitting within that team. So the meeting minutes, the solution design, and the user guide.
Yeah, so I think we can delete the minutes. We don't need those anymore. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. We can use the ellipses, or we can use the delete button at the top. And then for the remaining two things, we haven't gone through a classification process yet. So we can click on edit in grid view, and we're not going to go through all the fields, but why don't we just set up the document types of these using our curated list of options?
Okay, so I can just click on the solution design. I'll look at the document type. And if I click on the add a tag, there's the list of kind of managed metadata that we had within SharePoint. I can just pick the relevant tag for this document and then click apply. And then that'll be applied to the document.
Perfect. Okay, I've seen a few questions come in. So we have got Q&A at the end, so I will come back and answer those questions at the end. So you've answered that there, Phil, and we could do the same with user guide and the other areas. Just someone's asked a question about, can someone sanitize the information before it's published? So it's important to say, when it goes into the knowledge base, it's not published. So you have the opportunity to sanitize, remove any sensitive information, either as the knowledge expert or as a subject matter expert. Or maybe you have a first step, which it goes through a compliance phase. We put a multi-step workflow in before things are approved. Depends on the complexity and the requirements of your organization. So there is that piece that happens. We don't want to put things exactly as you say straight into the knowledge base. There was a question about FAQs. FAQs, yeah, that list wasn't exhaustive on that slide. There's only so many things you could fit on one slide. So FAQs relating to a product or a solution absolutely could be a good thing to do. Thank you. There we go. Okay, so Phil, we've talked about knowledge. Now, the one thing I don't think we have looked at is what happened to our Teams chat. So why don't we go back into back into Power Automate. And if we click on View Knowledge Waiting for Review, that's going to bring back the list of everything waiting for review. Now, we didn't put a workflow on this Teams chat, but we could have done. But as you can see at the very top, it looks like it's created into a Word document. If you want to click on that, Phil, we just look at the content and what's happened here.
So what I can see here, I've just opened up that Word document. The title of the Word document is actually the subject line that we had within the Teams chat. So the webinar form, auto registration. And then within that Word document, what I can see is the original post. So the question that I asked. And then underneath that is the verified post. So that response that we got, that single response that we decided was the kind of right answer for my question, that's sitting underneath it within the Word document.
Yeah, so we just been for the technical aspect here. We use a product called Encodian here. They have actually a free level of their model, which helps create Word documents. So we've gone through that Teams chat. We've pulled out the reply, and that's one we highlighted. And then we've also pulled out the original post and the subject line. Now, if your business rule was actually we'd like the context of the whole conversation, then we could absolutely drop that into this document. This is purely an example to show you how do I take information in one platform and move it into a different platform, or same underlying platform, but into maybe a different part of a Microsoft 365 productivity experience. So that's great news, Phil. I think we can close that now. We could go see this is pending. We could go through the review process. You've already seen that, but the same review process could apply. And as questions said before, that review process could go through multiple stages if that's what came out of the information management and how your business needs to operate. So, Phil, let's go back to the slides. So we talked about their subject matter experts and the review process. We're not putting something straight into the public domain for consumption. But then the classification piece as well, we talked about the opportunity to either add tags where tags were needed or update tags where maybe they're incorrect or maybe that hasn't been correctly understood. And that's all going to be driven by the information architecture. It might be that when you get to your scenario, you don't need 4 dropdowns, you need 1 or 2. There might be different ways of doing it. But we've got this information. Next piece is dissemination of information. How do we get people aware of it? And there's 4 ways that I think we see how that happens. So findability, and this is why you're tagging information in the first place. The first piece is around news and urgency. So this is something that you might want to highlight that people might not be actively looking for. It could be a new case study you've just launched, and if people don't know about it, that could be one point. The other way is some people prefer, rather than free search, they prefer to use navigation. So go down for more a drop-down experience. So maybe come into the knowledge base and then find, right, I know I'm looking for something to do with, say, case studies or adoption. So I'm going to click on that and drive into that area. There's a third piece, which we call pages. This is evergreen areas, such as I want to go to a marketing area and I want to drill down into case studies because that's how I think. And with all these cases, we're accessing the same information. We're not creating copies of information which is already in the knowledge base. And the final piece is that search experience. So we can use search, and we're going to show you this in Search Refiners to quickly find the right information. So, Phil, let's go back into the internet and let's start with some news. And we've actually put some news on the front page of the knowledge site. So if we just want to click on knowledge, now this news could be bubbled up onto the homepage of our intranet, but in this case, we've purely kept it within the knowledge area. So Phil, why don't you click on that case study and tell us what you see?
Okay, so I've just clicked on the Megacorp case study, and it's just opened up a SharePoint page. But look at the very top of the page. It's actually let me know some of the associated classification or metadata with this page. So who the client was, the sector that it relates to, and the solution as well that we provided for that client. And if I just scroll further down, what I can see there is it's actually embedded the Word document of that case study within that page. So I can just start reading that document straight on the page. I don't need to actually go off and open that in a separate window. It's all there and available for me to quickly browse through.
Excellent. So that's the first way, is that publishing news. And as I said, that news could be on the homepage as well. The second way, Phil, if you were looking for something around Microsoft 365 adoption, how might you find that in the knowledge area?
So what I would do, if I just click on the site menu, if I just hover over there, what you'll see is there are kind of 3 different headings under our site menu. It's reusing all those classifications that we've been using when we've been submitting the knowledge. So we have our solutions, our sectors, and our methodology. So I could select each one of these options, but for the example you're talking about, that user adoption, I'll just click on M365 user adoption and just jump to that page.
And I think what this does is gives you the opportunity to add a bit of context. So if you just scroll up to the top of the page there, Phil, you can see that we just put, a couple of lines around user adoption in there. We could put some key contacts in on the right side. Who's the right person to speak to if you're not finding what you're looking for? So we've got that option there as well, just to give a bit more of a personalized experience rather than simply serving up data from the knowledge base, maybe without the right context. So that's two of our ways of accessing things. Let's look at the example I talked about where maybe marketing want to publish their case studies. And I think you can access that from the Intranet Hub at the top level there.
Yeah, so I'll go to the Intranet Hub, look at marketing collateral underneath the resources, and I'll just jump to that page. And then from here, just in that web part at the very top, there's a case studies link. So I'll just click on case studies. And then from here, I can see all of the recently published case studies all sitting here in nice shortcuts that I can just click on to open.
Lovely. So that's three of the ways. Let's get into the final way, which is search in knowledge.
So for search in knowledge, I'll jump back to the knowledge site. And then from here, you'll see in the site menu, there's a knowledge search. So I can just click on that and I'll get taken through to this search page. Now from the knowledge site, I can just kind of do a quick, some kind of quick keyword to kind of search through our results. What we also have on the left-hand side are a set of filters. So again, these filters are the three same headings that we've used across our site for the navigation and when we've been submitting knowledge. And all I need to do is to select one of these filters, click apply, and what you'll see is the search results are going to be filtered based on what I'm specifically looking for. And again,
And now,
I could just type in a keyword here and it'll bring back results specific to that keyword.
now I know that, this is a Microsoft story, but I very much like this to be Amazon.com or .co.uk search experience, helping you find the right information super quick. But that only works when information is tagged in the right way. And I think you can see that in the search results there, Phil, around where those tags sit. So I think that's dissemination. I don't think I want to cover any more on that, Phil. So I just want to come back to the slide there. We talked about the news piece, and one of the things actually we do to make that a little bit easier is news templates, which is a really easy way of helping people get the right content out there. Navigation, we talked about how you can navigate within the knowledge area, and we've created separate pages for each of the various areas. So people have some context, maybe a person to contact. We looked at the evergreen pages, or the pages we call under marketing. And then finally, we looked at search. So the final step in the process, Phil, is the monitoring stage. How do we make sure that the content we create is still current and that people are doing what they're meant to be doing in terms of reviewing? So we've got a nice little view on that and the monitoring piece. So if you want to go back to Power Automate Chat, and what we've got, if we just scroll up a little bit there, is we have a job which fires, I think, once a week, which highlights the information which needs to be reviewed. So we're not going to bombard people. I mean, obviously, you've seen a lot of Power Automate adaptive cards pop up today, but this can be a scheduled job and it highlights what needs to be reviewed. And it could be, obviously Megan's the only person in this scenario, but it could be multiple people getting different views of this. And we can click on review these documents, and it's going to take us into a view of a knowledge base. And so, Phil, do you just want to highlight what's in front of you?
Yep, sure. So again, this has taken me through to the document library within the knowledge site, but it's provided a slightly different view to the kind of previous views that we've talked about. So this view does a couple of things. First of all, it's showing all the documents that have a next review date within the next 30 days, and also those where the next review date is in the past. So the review's overdue. It's also filtered just to me. So if somebody else clicked on this view, they'd only be able to see those documents which they were the document owner for. It also shows we've used some conditional formatting. So the next review date, if the next review date is within the next 30 days, it's going to be showing with this kind of amber color. If the next review date is actually in the past, we made it red just to make it a bit more obvious that these are ones that they should probably prioritize in having a look at.
Excellent. I think that's super helpful. So that highlights the managing. Obviously, there might be a role where you actually delete stuff. That's acceptable. Don't treat a knowledge base the same as a filing system. A filing system tends to be, we keep something for life, just in case. A knowledge system is live and active and needs to be relevant. So I think that, Phil, we'll just go on to the slides to wrap up what we've seen here. So we looked at that monitoring view there and making sure people are doing their reviews. And yes, we can put workflows around to support that. But don't forget that we can destroy stuff. It doesn't have to be here forever. So let's just wrap up what we've seen today. I think the key takeaways are knowledge is everywhere. We've looked at different parts of the technology stack of where it might sit. But to make a knowledge system useful, we need to remove the friction of capture. What's the first step? And we've shown that through some tools that we've created. But it might be that you work in different ways, and just encourage people to drop things into a SharePoint library where you can manage it without the automation. And then something that you talk a lot about, Phil, when we've had these conversations, is adopting a knowledge first mindset. What do you mean by that?
So there's a couple of different things. The first one kind of, does this add value? So are there other people within your organization that will benefit from this information, from this knowledge? The second one is, where is their oversight? So just making sure that the information that you're storing is kept relevant, is kept up to date and correct. The third being, does this kind of change anything? So has anything changed? Is that going to affect the knowledge that we're storing? And then the fourth one being, kind of start with a knowledge base first. So think about, has someone had this problem before? Does an answer already exist within the knowledge base? And kind of going to that knowledge base first and kind of searching for your answer there.
Yeah, I mean, really what we're trying to do is free up the experts to do their job, and so they can capture this, their learnings once, and then it's a benefit for everybody. And some of that start with a knowledge base has to be pushed back from the experts to say, I've actually answered that before, go to the knowledge base, you'll find the answer. So just highlighting what we've seen today, Phil, on the next slide, is we talked about that initial stage of identification. Where are the conversations? Where's that knowledge being created and talked about? And one of the challenges can be, it's not always in technology. It can be people meeting in a room and people aren't writing it down. And that's one of the things that you're going to have to address. Once you've identified it, then you're going to think about, well, how are we going to capture it? And we talked about both harvesting and submitting. So harvesting might be a knowledge manager actively going out to look for something, but we can also talk about AI, and we're going to come on to that in a second. But the second bit is for submitting. So people in quotes the field be able to say, yeah, that's useful. We should submit that and put that into our knowledge management solution. So once we've done that, we then need to think about the validation piece. So how do we validate it? How do we classify it? And that's where your subject matter experts come in. And there might be multiple levels of validation. It might be a legal validation and a topic validation. And then your knowledge manager or librarian to make sure that you've got the right tags attached to it. Moving on from that, we then have the dissemination of data. So how do we share this information around? We talked about news, if you want to be a bit more proactive, whereas the user-led, maybe more reactive approach is, how do I browse, search, find pages to find that information? And then the final point, but just as important as any other, is how do we make sure we keep this current? This is a living system. So how do we manage that content? So that brings us, I think, to a close on the webinar. Q&A, feel free to put some in the chat. I know there's a couple of questions already. So I'm going to pop the first one to you, Phil. The search page, how did you make that work? I want to say P&P, but you're going to tell me otherwise, are you?
No, that's right. That's right. Using the kind of P&P search functionality. So it's not out of the box, but it is something that is Microsoft, I don't want to say support, but they're kind of aware of, and they're happy for people to kind of to use.
And that's free of charge, isn't it? I think that's right.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So P&P stands for Patterns and Practices. It's community created solutions which are available to everybody, but they're not officially supported by Microsoft, but the community supports them. So that's hopefully answers that one for you. So yeah, you can go ahead and do that if you're appropriately skilled, should we say. The second question was about large organizations, how to manage curation because you have so many assets. I think a couple of things that are worth saying. We've used one person to do all of this. In reality, multiple SMEs will be involved in an organization. No one expert can be everything. So you have to think about how you route it. And the same for curation. If you're a particularly large organization, you might have different curators for different parts of the organization. So we could create workflows depending on how that information has been categorized to make sure it's correctly curated. That said, there was one organization that we're working with. It's a law firm. There's 300 people. They have one knowledge manager who does all that curation. But if it's a bigger organization, then yes, you might think of a different approach, or it might be based on different geographies because there might be different, jurisdictions and that kind of thing. So I think that's answered the questions. Just one final slide, I think, to wrap up with. Actually, two final slides. The first one is, if this was useful to you, we deliver information management workshops. I know we're based in the UK, but we do deliver these internationally, given the power of Teams. We have clients in the States, we have clients in the Middle East, as well as in the UK, where we help your organization understand the value of SharePoint as a solution rather than a technology. So helping people understand what the technology can do and aligning that to what your challenges are. And trying to bring people within your organization onto the same page. So that's one of the ways that we help and start typically any engagement. Well, I've just seen another question here, Phil. So people are still there. It's okay. How do you find expertise with the organization? That is something that you'd have to work out within your own business. That's not something, unfortunately, which technology can solve. So, and Viva Learning, that's an interesting point. We hadn't considered that. It's certainly something that we can think about down the line. Okay, right. I will wrap this up there.